What's up guys, BLC here and welcome to first episode of Tutorial Tuesday. This being a tutorial series obviously, and it'll happen every Tuesday, hopefully. Yeah, my beard is itchy, so yeah, alright, fixed it. Alright, so today I will just start with a real big thing. I'm gonna teach you some things about Element 3D if you never used it before, and maybe for some of you people who use it already, but maybe you'll learn something too. So yeah, so once you open up After Effects, obviously you'll have this window here. Just make a new composition. There you go. Doesn't matter, whatever. Just the way you want it. Make a new solid first of all. Layer solid. Bam, solid. All right. So next of all, you want to apply element. Right here, effects with your Copilot element. If you don't know what element is, I don't know why you're watching, but it basically is a plugin from Video Copilot. It is not free, but you can get it for free. I'm just saying, not going to show you how, but yeah. It is a plugin that allows you to build. No. What kind of to build 3D objects in After Effects itself. So you're just saving yourself the extra step of rendering it in Cinema 4D and then importing it into After Effects, which makes it a lot faster to work with. And after all, it's all about workflow, and that this tool right here is just amazing for that. There is some other tools, but they'll cost more, they're not that fast and all that, but so if you want to start off with 3D in After Effects, go with Element. It's pretty good. Alright, so you will have this window here. I'll just explain the basic layout first of all. You basically have 5 groups. Each group resembles a particle replicator. So it's basically, Element is a particle system, but it emerges 3D objects. So let's say you want to have a grid of 3D basketballs, baseballs, whatever. You can put them in a particle system right here in Element. So that's pretty cool, and you can have 5 different groups of that. So yeah. Then, if you want to animate from one group to another, you can use the animation engine. I'll show you that later. It's pretty cool. Some cool stuff you can do with that. World Transform is basically just moving the whole system of Element. So you can change the... oh, sorry, wrong one. So you can change the position here and just the rotation, the scale, whatever. And yeah. That is pretty useful sometimes. Custom layers. This is where a lot of the magic happens. You can import layers that you have inside your timeline. You can set them here, like here you can set them to that layer, and you can basically use that layer for your 3D objects, and that is pretty cool. I'm gonna show you that as well. Then utilities, that's something very specific that I'm not gonna tell you about. Maybe we'll come across that someday. It's not very, like, not too useful most of the time, but sometimes it is useful. I mean, but normally you don't need it. Render settings is pretty damn important. It's just how deciding how the whole looks of your scene looks like. So environment and lighting obviously is a big thing. Then there you have fog, ambient occlusion. All that I'll explain later. Output is something pretty specific. It's more for advanced users. Yeah, I'll tell you about that. And render mode is basically just for your PC. If you want to work faster, you can set that to preview or even draft, and the whole thing will render faster. And once you get to the point where you want to render the whole thing out at the end of your animation, all that, you can set it to full render, and yeah, then go eat some cake. Alright, so really, how you gonna get your 3D object into Element is basically by clicking Scene Setup. This will open up a whole new window. Might be a bit confusing, but basically you have your model browser here. You can import different 3D models that you have saved down on your computer and all that. You can also import 3D models that you don't have in the model browser yet. Then there is your scene window and your material window right here. Here's material and bevel browser. So you basically have material presets and all that, so that's pretty useful. Actually, I've bought some materials from Video Copilot. It's a pretty good material pack. Pro Shaders it's called. I think it's $50 or something like that, but it is pretty good. I use it all the time. But yeah, so let's get into it. First of all, I want to show you guys how to make some text, because that's probably the main thing I use Element for, is creating 3D text. First of all, you're just gonna type in a text like you normally would, just with the text tool. So I'm just gonna type tutorial, and doesn't have to be centered or anything. And you can actually shut it off now. Move that below just for to keep in the order, or the whatever. And yeah, next thing you do is go into your Element window, go to Custom Layers, and Custom Text and Masks. So you want to, what I was talking about, you can select a layer. This time we're going to select our text layer. You can select that, and now Element is using this layer as a as something that you can use instead of Element. So next thing you want to do is go into your scene setup, and here you have this option here, extrude. If you want to click that, you basically have some 3D text right here. Pretty cool, and it's pretty fast. Like I'm even rendering in Cinema 4D right now, and it's still pretty fast, and rendering wise, I mean. And yeah, so you have your text now. It's all extruded, 3D, pretty good looking, and now you can throw some materials on it. You have 22. No, wait. You have 20 already installed materials when you buy After Effects or get After Effects, whatever way you want. I'm not judging. And you can actually save your own presets. I have my magma stone and my white stone preset here. I don't even know why I made a preset for this, because I don't use them ever. But yeah, so you can have your materials here, and you can select any of them and just drag them on your object or on here, and you now have some different looking material. And if you buy Pro Shaders, you have these concrete, fabric, whatever materials. Metal is pretty cool. I got some cool metal textures here. I like the grungy one. It's just looking pretty sweet. But yeah, we'll just go with the already built-in materials. Okay, so you now have some material on it. Now, if you click on the material, you can edit it here. So basically, it's not really a material, but it is a bevel, which means if you wanna edit the way your text is looking, you do it in the material option. Extrude right here. It's how much you want to extrude the text, basically. And expand edges is sometimes pretty useful because you can shrink it down if your letters are overlapping, but they aren't right now, so we're just gonna put them back up. Bevel size. Bevel is basically this rounded edge here. If we put that to 0, we're just gonna have some pretty boring looking text. And bevel is always good to have to catch highlights on the edges, which makes the text so much more dramatic and really nice looking. So you see how we're catching all these highlights here on the edges? Without that, it will look pretty plain and not so great. So yeah, always put bevels on, and yeah. Then we have the bevel depth. You see how we're extruding here when we put the bevel on and off? We're kind of extruding. I'm just gonna undo that string. Sorry, what? Command Z or Z. And now the bevel depth is how much the bevel moves out of your objects, basically. Let's put that back up to 1. Bevel segments is something you might wanna look into if your PC isn't that fast. Basically, what Element is doing is rounding out these edges by adding extra segments to your edge. So basically, when you don't have any rounding, you have this is a segment, this is a segment, then back of it this is a segment, and the other side is a segment too. But now Element is adding those segments to the edges, so you can actually get a curve here. I wonder if we can see that. Yeah, we can. Wireframe, there you go. It might be a little bit hard to see, but you see here we have like, God, it's really hard to see for you guys. I'm sorry. Alright, this might be a good position to look. Okay, no. Holy shit. Alright, now you can see it, hopefully. We have these rounded edges here. And if we decrease the amount of segments, see what happens? It only has 2 segments now. And 1. It's just gonna be 1 segment. And that makes it a very sharp edge. So you're basically going from this here, from there to there, in a straight line. If we have multiple segments, it will be rounded out. You can also adjust it here. Set that to 0, just a straight line. And then in that case you can actually set the segments to 1. It'll not have any any effect on on the looks of it. And what I was saying, if your PC is running slow, might want to tone down the segments. It's because segments are particles that you might need. But if you just have if you have like a lot of text and your PC isn't really fast, all these segments that you add on the edges are really adding up, even though it's just 3. But like, how many letters do we have here? We have 8 letters, so that's already 24 segments more than you would have without any segments, and bevel segments, I mean. And that just adds up, and if your PC isn't that fast, you might want to tone that down. Then Z offset is basically the Z position. That doesn't show right now, but if we get into these bevel previews in a second, you will see what that can do. Bevel backside is basically adding another bevel to the backside. I don't use it that often, but I mean, sometimes it's useful. So what else? Materials. This is where the material actually starts to get where you can edit the material. I mean, texture diffuse is basically what you see on there. So if we load up a metal material very quick, let's go with bumpy. It's pretty ugly, but let's not go with bumpy because that doesn't have a diffuse material. There you go. So the grunge one has a diffuse material. If we shut that off, you just have that. So that's basically your texture. You have a specular. That means if your material is catching light, right, like here, and you put a specular texture on it, it'll catch the light differently. See that? It'll just look a lot more normal. Reflection is pretty obvious. You can also shut that off and it'll just look different. Illumination, I mean, not much I can explain about that. The normal bump is pretty cool. It kind of simulates a real texture on your text. So you have like a little bit of scratches and all that in here. Like you have little bumps in your texture now. We shut that off. We might actually not see anything big because it's not very it's not that in your face right here. Occlusion, I actually never used that before, so I don't know what that does. Alright. Then we have basically the basic settings. Diffuse color is basically if you don't have a diffuse texture, we can change the diffuse color to change our text color. Alright. So that's pretty good. Specular and all that is just that actually does something, huh? Alright. So specular color is for these edges. You see this is kind of orangish. We'll change that to black or white, something like that. It'll look different. This is the amount of specular. Shininess will make your specular wider and sharper, which can be very very powerful to play with. And yeah, so ambient is how much your texture actually lights up from light, I think. And yeah, then we have reflection, kind of tones the reflection you catch with your material. It's a very pale orange in this case. You have the intensity here, so see we're catching way more reflections now than we were before. Let's just bring it back down. Fresnel is kind of blur for the reflection. You know, some things are not as reflective as a mirror, for example. No, sorry. And yeah, then refraction is not even turned on, so let's not worry about that. Illumination, pretty much just we turn that on. Illumination. Let's all turn it on. Illumination is basically just light coming out of the material. Okay, so then you have the balanced options. Force opacity, you can lower the opacity of your material here. It's pretty good for glass and all that. Smoothing, what does smoothing do? Oh, that's for the bevel. Might want to turn smoothing down if your PC is running slow as well. Alpha threshold, I actually never play with these settings, except of some of them. Oh yeah. So matte shadow is something something very specific that I don't want to get into right now. Ignore AO. AO stands for ambient occlusion, which is a a render setting. I think it's a setting that gives you like detail around areas where two objects touch. Like right here, those are pretty close together. Like this edge and this plane right here. And when you turn on ambient occlusion, you'll get some shadow on here from that edge because they're so close together. Like you would in real life. You see, wait here. See, if I move my finger closer to my hand, I'll get some shadowing, like right here. That is not necessarily coming from the light, but from the two surfaces being so close together. And that is basically what ambient occlusion is. And you can turn it off here. I just go way into detail here. Then AO amount, you can tone it down instead of just ignoring it completely. Glow amount is not important for this material, but you can turn on glow in the render settings in the other menu, and that is pretty good too. Drop back faces, something if you lower the opacity. Let's just do that for now. You actually see, if I turn this off, it won't render the back side of it. It'll render it even if we turn it off from this side, but not from this side. And that is pretty useful too. If you have some glass, you can actually see both sides of the glass because it has some depth to it. And yeah, so that's basically material. Just push it up to 100 again. And yeah, so that's pretty much all you need to know about materials, I guess. Alright, so let's just click OK for now and go back into our After Effects window. So you have your text here, cool. And if you create a new camera, here you go. You can actually rotate around it pretty fast. You can move up close, and yeah, it's all pretty cool. So pretty powerful, as I said, pretty fast rendering plugin, and it's just so useful if you don't want to render out Cinema 4D all the time. But it is not a complete 3D program. Sorry, am I lagging? I think I am. Oh well. It is not a complete 3D program. It's just basically a light version of Cinema 4D, if you want to put it that way. But yeah, so you can actually model things in here, in Element and all that. And yeah, you just have way more settings in Cinema 4D than you have in Element. But let's not worry about that. So you have your text here. That's pretty cool and all that. But what if you want to get some randomness in there? Basically, we have our sorry, I didn't explain it. We have our model here. This is our text model, and right now it's set to group 1. So you have those 5 groups here that I was talking about. My mouse is being weird. So we have 5 groups here. We need to put it on group 1 by default, and we can actually edit this replicator. Sorry, in group 1 right here. So we can actually have more text. Basically, have the same text, like let's say 5 times, and then right now it's set to point, so they're all on the same spot. If you set that to plane, you actually have more text here. Also, that's pretty useful. But yeah, so that's that. Like I was talking about earlier, this being actually a particle replicator system plugin. I mean, not a real 3D plugin. But yeah, if you want to get some randomness in your text, because right now it's just boring, just straight text, which is cool if you want to have that like that. But I normally want to get some random rotation in my letters. And how you do that is go into your particle look, go to multi-object, turn it on, and now turn up the rotation randomness. See that? That's pretty cool. Like, I like that effect. Just makes it more interesting. You can also play with the scatter here. Turn that up in the different directions if you would do it. If you don't mind. There you go. Being a bit slow today, but that's alright. So yeah, we randomize our text. We can also get some noise on our position here. So basically wiggling around if we would animate the noise evolution, which is not very great looking, but sometimes it can be useful. Most of the time it isn't. That's up to you. You can also turn on the size random, which is pretty cool sometimes if you have like kind of rock debris and you want to randomize it a bit and all that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so a couple more things about the render settings before I cut it off here and leave it until next week, because I will split this tutorial up into 2 parts, because Element 3D is just too much stuff you can do with it, so that I could just explain it all in sorry, wow, voice crack, wow, in 30 minutes. I'm actually embarrassed right now. Alright, let's just move on. Yeah. Yeah, render settings, right. Totally caught me off guard here. Environment is pretty cool. If you have a clip, let's just actually load something in. Clips. Boom. Personal clips. Sorry. Let's just load a clip in. I don't even know what clip that is, even though it's one of my clips. I never seen that before. Oh, so we have a clip here. I don't know, we want to track it somewhere here or something like that. And we can actually shut that off for now and go into our element menu. Go to custom layers, custom texture maps, not text and maps, but texture maps, and select our clip. So now you can go back into your scene setup and go to environment, and then click on this arrow here, go to custom layer 1, which is our clip that we selected, and now we have that as our environment of the text. So now the lighting is pretty much coming from the colors of our clip, which just makes the blending of the text a lot better. Well, it's not very useful right here, but it just looks a lot better if you put it that way. Yeah, so that's that. Lighting is pretty cool. You don't really want to light your stuff with actual lights that you can create here. Oh, wow, what kind of crazy light is that? Let's just go with a bluish one, something like that. Right. So you want to create a light here, and Element actually reacts to that light, which is pretty cool. So let's say we move our light around, see how that is affecting the look of our text. So you normally want to do it like that. If you don't want to mess with that, or just don't have time or something like that, lighting can be pretty powerful. Here you have add lighting. We can select maybe dark. Dark looks pretty cool. So now you have some lighting from Element. You can go to additional lighting, rotation, and rotate it around your text until you find something looking cool. I like this high contrast right here. Maybe even a little bit like that. And yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's lighting. Fog is something you don't necessarily want to get into if you're not that familiar with all that stuff. It's basically if you have something way in the distance of from the point of view. There can be some fog, like if you look at some mountains, they're always like foggy from the atmosphere and all that stuff. You can turn that on here. See how it's getting a little bit darker because it's set to black. But if we turn it on to like an atmosphere color, like a light blue, see how if that will be way in distance, this will look way more natural with the fog enabled, but let's not worry about that yet. And yeah, ambient occlusion, already talked about that. Can enable it here. Doesn't do much because we have text, nothing around it, but yeah, motion blur for moving text and objects. Just put some motion blur. Always looks good, always looks more realistic, always looks great. Depth of field, I normally don't put it on in Element itself. I normally go from my camera. Let's just, oh, this is being slow as fuck right now. Let's just move closer. Go on. Alright, there you go. If you want to put some depth of field on, you can go to your camera, select it, and double press A. Then you have your camera options, and I'll turn depth of field on. And the cool thing is that Element actually is working inside the After Effects 3D world, so your camera will react to the 3D text you created. So that's set that the focus distance to like something like 500, I think, and that should give us a pretty cool. Yeah, see, this is out of focus, and the focus is right here, something like around there. And yeah, I normally do it like that, but let's turn it off for now because that's pretty heavy for the renderer and for your CPU. You might want to turn it off while working and turn it back on when you're done and you want to get your final render going. Glow, right here. We don't have any glow thingy on our texture, but you can turn it on right here. It just works like the normal glow. Camera cutoff, I actually never used it before, so don't know what it does. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So that's it for now. I'll show you some cool things next week. Hopefully some cool things. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like to keep this series going. But even if not, I'll just keep it going until I don't feel like doing it anymore. So till next Tuesday, it's been BLC TK, and goodbye.